Hi, welcome to a new edition of Data in the Hallway. My name is Ray Pig, Community Manager at PingCAP, joined by my co-host as always. I guess we're color coordinated today, Daniel. Daniel joining us
Yes.
from the Netherlands. Good to see you. And we're joined by two of our colleagues, distinguished colleagues today, Brian Walters and Kyle Cao, both on the pre-sales teams. Good to see you both. Yeah, and today, as you can guess from the title of the episode is called the Migration Playbook. We're going to talk about database migration in general, and then also migration, obviously, to TiDB in particular. So, Brian, Kyle, welcome once again, and thanks again for your time and lending your expertise. And I know. Brian, I mean, you've been sort of putting this sort of playbook together with your team members for a while, and that I think we have a white paper coming out soon, like hopefully in the next a month or two. I mean, tell us about like how this like a process started. Like, what was sort of the inspiration for putting this together? Was it for like mostly internal like a resource, or is this did you have like a customers in mind when you started putting this playbook together?
Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Ray, and thanks, Daniel. So, like most things that we do here at PingCAP, it started from listening to our customers. We had a lot of customers who wanted to move very rapidly with their deployments, but TiDB is a new database product out there. So there's not a whole lot of expertise already out there. So it's difficult to just do a simple Google search and come across with, 15 different blog sites that have documented best practices and maps. Some of the older database technologies like Oracle and SQL Server and DB2, you can do that with quite readily. But TiDB just doesn't have the volume of user base out there for that yet. And it's a distributed system. So there's more to it than a traditional monolithic single server database. So it requires a stronger breadth of understanding in order to actually successfully deploy it. We work on the pre-sales side as pre-sales engineers. So we work with customers through POCs, and we would get them to that point, and then they would purchase the product and get ready to do their implementation. And if they didn't actually purchase some professional services help to help them implement it, then they had to rely on the documentation, which is good. But again, if you're not really fully immersed in the distributed SQL space, there's a lot of new concepts there. So we realized that there was this need in the market for this material. Obviously, our customers can always call support and help out, but that's generally a reactive type kind of situation. We wanted to present something to them that they could use proactively. And so, by the time we were done with this white paper, if there was a couple of things that came out clear to us, it was that migrations are actually very complicated events. They need to be treated as like first-class development projects, and they require extensive planning and preparation to pull off successfully.
Right. Yeah, I guess being a distributed database just adds a lot more complexity. And then, obviously we have a wide breadth of customers. I mean, I've only been here a little over a year at PingCAP, but even just considering different source databases, they come from, there are different source databases that you need to deal with. So you'll have different levels of challenges. Maybe this is a naive question, and I don't know if this is something that we thought about, like, couldn't there be like an automatic tool that people can just sort of plug in and start migrating their source database into TiDB? Or-
Yeah, it's a good question. The answer is yes and no. And actually, Kyle, do you want to talk a little bit about TEMS and how that came about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's really a good question about is there any automatically, a tool to help us finish the migration? I mean, just no manual work anymore. I mean, all done by the tool. Actually, the answer is yes and no. I totally agree with you, Brian. And yeah, we have a project. I mean, internally, the name is TiDB Migration Service. So, I mean, by this tool, we can significantly reduce the efforts we need to take during the migration process. And this tool can help you not only migration the MySQL, but we aims at Oracle. We have a bunch of the Oracle migration use case we can use in this tool to help you to convert the Oracle language to TiDB language, and also help you to check whether you have some of the feature that TiDB don't support it. So that's I will back to you, Brian.
Yeah. So and that's a really good example. You know, we've got one tool, Thames, which was targeted at some of our early Oracle customers. But one of the key components of Thames is to identify the things that can't be done automatically. And like that's where some of its primary value is and you know, some of this stuff, just for example, are like store procedures, because that's not a function that is part of the TiDB bag of capabilities. But we have another tool in our commercial tool set that is called creatively enough data migration, also known as TiDB data migration, and we abbreviate it as DM. We maybe could have been more creative with the name, but it is what it is, you know, and it's a fantastic tool for migrating MySQL databases. The common pattern here is that each of these tools generally will focus on like one platform. So even when you look at the cloud provider tools, so like AWS has data migration service, also another great tool. We can leverage it in some use cases because we are a MySQL compatible database. But the complexity and the vast number of source databases that you could have as sources to a TiDB database where you're migrating from, and it could be anything from a big data platform like HBase to a document store like MongoDB to a traditional relational database like Oracle. All of the considerations are different. And, you know, even if you were to attempt to map out a decision tree, there would be so many forks on this tree that it's a decision bush. It's not a decision tree. And it can get quite hairy. And so, you know, if the question is, can you create a tool that can navigate the bush? You might be able to, but that would be one really, really, really big tool that would be the complexity of the tool might in itself become something that needed to be managed.
Cool. Yeah, and I think like a little earlier you mentioned that like this migration project should be considered like a, you know, first class, like a technical project. Can you sort of walk us through like some of the like what are some of the like steps or processes that people should go through as they're like planning for migration, and what are steps that they actually go through during the migration process? Like,
Yeah, this is a good question. And this is kind
yeah.
of where, as we were going through the development of this white paper, all of a sudden we started, you know, seeing all of these different branches and areas of focus that really needed to be covered in this entire process. And, you know, that brought us back to the just plain reality that it has to start with an assessment. You have to know the landscape of what you're attempting to do before you even get started. And then once you get the assessment, and you know, the assessment is looking at the source database, it's looking at the workload type, it's looking at things like concurrency. It's not only the basics of the database in terms of data volume and retention and things like that, but you need to get into the workload in order to make sure that, number one, you are architected correctly on the destination TiDB side, but that you also can architect the migration tools correctly to be able to accomplish it. Sometimes when you're looking at these non-relational platforms, you have to bake into it some sort of effort to do some transformation on it. You have to, we've gone for, a lot of companies have gone for several years now with the promise of, you know, how great it's going to be to work in a schemaless data store. And when they then find a need to move back to a relational data store, they may have the concept of an account number stored in 100 different documents in 30 different, you know, key formats. in their key value pair sequences. So these things can very quickly become a very huge project for actually just trying to clean up the data and get it ready to migrate into a relational database. So that moves very easily from the assessment phase into the design phase. Whatever needs to be built in order for this to actually be successful has to go through most likely a coding and development phase, and then a lot of times there are database specific features from the source database. I'll go back to the idea of stored procedures again. That would require remediation, and this means that if the application is dependent upon database resident application logic, that needs to be moved up into the application layer, maybe made into specific microservices. Once you've got the assessment done, you've got the design done, you believe that you've done most of the coding and development that has to be done, and this would include like migration scripts as well as data remediation, code remediation. Then you have to actually start, it's only then that you start planning the actual execution of this. So it's a lot like planning for like a Broadway play, except that you're only going to get one run of this show if it goes off well, if it's successful. So you need to plan the steps of it. You need to plan the ability to run coexistent with the new system and the old system at the same time. If you need cross-replication in the two of them, or you need to parallel write to the two of them at the same time, you need to plan that out. If things go really funky, then you need to have an emergency fallback plan planned in. And then the actual cutover event day, when that happens, that needs to be fully planned out. And of course, for every single one of these steps, there's a huge cast of characters, and everybody has to know and understand their roles. And all of this has to go through extensive testing, and then resource planning. Again, like I said, it's a production. Yeah, and then post-migration also as well. One of the most important aspects of the whole thing is to document everything. Document what the situation was before the migration, document everything that was done to do the migration, and document the entire final state, because people change jobs, both inside the company and outside the company, and you never know what's going to happen, and it's a finite number of people who are involved in the migration itself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, not just in migration, documentation is something that people tend to forget to do. But yeah, for something with the level of complexity you're talking about, yeah, you can definitely understand why it's important. And also, sort of going back to my question, because of all this complexity, it's just impossible to sort of automate everything. I mean, big portion of it you might during the execution, but yeah. And then the other thing that I didn't really think about until you mentioned it, you mentioned applications, Brian, like, because typically database support like different business applications, right? Like how are the applications going to behave after the migration? How well they'll work with TiDB. I guess that's sort of another level of consideration that I didn't think about, but that makes complete sense. So,
Yeah, the main, and maybe Kyle, you want to talk about this. One of the main things that you're trying to do while you're preparing for a migration is remove risk from the entire thing. Kyle, did you want to talk about things that you might have to look at in terms of de-risking the whole process?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the most important value for our to organize this migration playbook is just to help our customer to remove the risk when they try or plan to migration. I mean, from their original database to TiDB. Yeah, so for the application layer, there's two things. I mean, we recommended our customer to pay attention to. One is, for example, you move from the single node database like MySQL, Oracle DB2, and to a distributed database like TiDB. From a single node to distributed, this is a different thing here. You need, pay attention to your application layer application to avoid the hard spot in a distributed system. So this is the first point. And the second one is, I mean, some of our customer will consider, I mean, they trying to choose a modernized this database. In that case, they also want to upgrade their application from current situation to a modernized application. So they will, I mean, just upgrade to the microservice application layer. And this is, I mean, the best fit for TiDB because we can support the high throughput and with the low latency and with a bunch of data, maybe over 5 terabytes in a single cluster. So, sorry, additional one is, I mean, we also need attention for some specific feature in TiDB. Yeah, this may be the compatibility with the difference with MySQL, maybe something, I mean, you change from HBase to TiDB, something you need to pay attention to. Yeah. So that's
and the only other thing that I'll add to what Kyle said was something I think, Ray, that you were alluding to as well is all of the integrations. You know, TiDB, part of the reason why it is a distributed database is because it is designed to handle very large scales. And whether the scale is data scale or high concurrency or high complexity, these are the sweet spots that TiDB excels in. So anytime that you have one of these systems that's an existing system, there are always upstream and downstream integrations with other databases. And this becomes part of the assessment phase, is finding all of the upstream and downstream integrations. And part of the plan needs to be planning ahead of time that you're never going to find them all. And you're not going to know that you missed one until you turn the legacy system off and get the phone call.
Daniel, were you about to jump in? Sorry, I think I may have cut you off, but.
No, I wasn't trying to jump in, but maybe one thing to add there is that, like, when it comes to risk, I think one of the other things that can like greatly change the amount of risk is that while doing the migration, if people also try to do a lot of other work, maybe go to a newer version of their application or application framework, like then they're also adding risk. So doing this in a well-structured way with multiple steps is a really great way of doing it, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. And I assume like one of the other risks, I think you may have like briefly mentioned it, Brian, is I mean there's going to be some downtime as you're migrating, right? I mean that's usually I mean I don't know if it's a risky period, but I'm sure it's certainly like a nervy period for customers as they're going through this, right?
Well, so this is a planning
Yeah.
consideration. And, you know, we do have customers who come in and say that downtime is not an option. Some of them have actually spoke for us at our HTAP conference, which happens annually in September. I'm going to throw a shameless plug in there because it's
No.
right around the corner.
Yeah.
And we're about to go through the craziness of another HTAP conference again.
Right.
But I always love listening to our customers talk about their migration stories at the HTAP conference. And more than one time, we've heard the story that downtime wasn't an option. And so this is when you run into situations, like I said, about how you require an initial, you need to develop some initial transformation tools that are customized directly to your data model, your workload. Maybe that involves you leveraging some off-the-shelf tools, but maybe it also involves that you have to write some custom code. Each situation would be unique, but you would perform an initial migration from that. Then you would have to perform some sort of a catch-up phase so that the new database can get caught up to real time with the production system. And then you have to figure out a way of keeping the two in sync. And some customers are able to use ETL tools. Some customers are able to build things in live streaming models, like through things like Kafka. And some customers have had to just code their application to operate in a dual write architecture, where it's writing to both systems at the same time. These are just kind of some of the techniques that are used to accomplish that, you know, seamless zero downtime migration cutover. The whole idea behind this is that you're going to have to run multi-version application. And at some point in time, when you do, you want to try and get it to the point to where the switchover is as easy as maybe a DNS change, and it becomes that simple, or it becomes a configuration change for the application, and then you just tell Kubernetes to start respawning new pods, something along those lines. If you can do enough planning on the back end and you can get things running in parallel, that's your highest chance and your highest probability of not having any downtime during a migration, but it doesn't happen by accident.
Right. Cool. Awesome. Maybe this is a question for you, Kyle. Hopefully I'm not putting you on the spot. Like, are there some customer stories that you can share? You've been here in North America for about a year now, but I'm sure you work with a lot of our major customers in North America. Are there some migration? Hopefully, I'm not reopening some of your wounds, but are there migration stories that you can share, if you don't mind?
Yeah, of course. Actually, in North America, we have a customer. They remove most of their HBase to TiDB. This customer name is, I think everyone is familiar with, is Pinterest. And laterly, I can share a technical blog. This is published by our customer. They, stage all of the detail, all of the process and all of the difficulty they facing during the HBase migrate to TiDB. So this is a great, example for some of our users. They wanted to migrate from HBase to TiDB. Yeah, and another customer story is it's a fintech customer. Its name is Plug. I think everyone is also familiar with Plug. Yeah, and they migrated from the MySQL to TiDB. And just a little bit echo to the downtime you and Brian mentioned about. In this customer, we help them to reduce, significantly reduce the downtime. And this can match real business requirements. And they have already successful launch about 4 or 5 TiDB clusters. They consolidate a bunch of the MySQL instance together in one TiDB cluster. And we lay a technical blog on the way. So let's looking forward to it. And the last one is also welcome to our HTTP Summit. You can heard as many as of the customer story for migration and their journey, and they will share their experience and the best practice during the process.
Yeah. I remember the presentation from Pinterest last year too. We even did a customer interview with the Pinterest team and talked about challenges they were having with HBase, and that was sort of the motivation for looking at TiDB. Yeah, I'll definitely put a link on the podcast description about the HTAP Summit. You'll get to hear success stories from some of our customers and some of the challenges they had to go through, because migration, I think, like we're talking about, isn't easy. So yeah, I definitely look forward to the white paper. Hopefully, depending on when people are listening, it may be published by then, but I'll definitely add a link to the white paper when it's out. But because I know we had a blog post, I think late last year, for people migrating from MySQL to TiDB. But I think more of these resources, I wouldn't be a community manager if I'm advocating for content, because all of these contents really help, not just community members, but even somebody like me, to sort of understand, these are some of the processes that people need to go through. Migration isn't just like a checklist on the spreadsheet, right? Unfortunately. So cool. Kyle and Brian, anything else you want to discuss? I really appreciate your time and sharing your experiences. But
yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah.
Actually, there's only one thing I wanted to point out here is, for us, we PingCAP team can just a specific for the migration. We can provide the full picture migration, the playbook we organize, and also we have a lot of experts. Just can support our customer to migrate from their original database to TiDB to reduce the downtime. To help them. Just deliver to TiDB smoothly. So, turn back to you, Brian.
Yeah, no, so I just want to encourage people to check out the TiDB documentation, because there are several migration sections in there that are not just tool oriented, but that also talk about the planning phases as well. I think the white paper is going to be really, really, really important. And then again, like you said, there's nothing like first case experience. So check out our YouTube site and review some of the videos from past HDAP conferences with customers like Pinterest, who go through in a presentation from last year the entire migration process. And that example coming from HBase was one that falls into the map like I laid out, where there was a lot of remediation that had to happen up front, and then they had to create an architecture for a dual write scenario.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, sort of, plugging our teams here. Not just pre-sales, but even support team that Daniel's part of. A lot of us, not me personally, a lot of you folks have seen a lot of different cases of migration. So I think that expertise is definitely helpful. Which could be a pretty daunting thing to do when you're trying to do it by yourself. So yeah, I appreciate your work on that and supporting our customers and community members.
Actually, I do have one more shameless plug that I cannot let the opportunity slide by, since this is a community podcast, and the audience to this, there's going to be a lot of highly technical and highly qualified people who are interested in TiDB listening to it, and I happen to be a manager at PingCAP. So the other website that you should check out is the careers page at pingcap.com. Please, we have a lot of open positions, so check it out. If you see something that you like, I have positions on my team all the time. Reach out to us. We are looking for the top talent in the world.
There you go. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, it's exciting to see him, especially in North America, continue to grow. Like it's like we have a huge army of folks, which is nice. So. Yeah. Cool. So we reach to our last question, which is a tradition. We ask for travel tips or local. We ask for local know-how. And Brian, you're in Austin, Texas. We actually have like 3 other guests from Austin, Texas. That shows you how popular Austin is. And Kyle, you're from the Bay Area. We had a number of guests too. So I'm going to kind of try to stump you and see if it can come up with a new trivia that you want to share. Brian, I'll start with you. Brian's like, what's your sort of local tip that you can offer to people that they may not find on travel guides?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Austin is very popular, and I think that everybody probably references either the Bats Under Congress Bridge or the barbecue. Those are great, but they're very well known. One of the less known, just complete gems of the area. It's probably about 45 minutes outside of Austin. It's a place that's called Enchanted Rock. So I encourage people to Google it. It is a hiking destination. It is 1,600 acres, and it is a single stone. It's a domed rock, and you can hike. You park at the bottom of the rock, and you just walk to the top. The grade can be pretty intense at times, but it's enough that you can still walk up the stone. And by the time you get to the top of it, the views from it are absolutely spectacular. But it is a single rock that is 1,600 acres.
Wow. Enchanted Rock, what a great name too. So I guess the only other question is, going up is one thing. Like, is it dangerous when you're coming down?
It's challenging. It is challenging because you're basically just coming down a ramp like that it probably takes a good 15, 20 minutes to get to the crest.
Right.
And so you've got a sustained 15, 20-minute walk back down a pretty steep ramp.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely have to check it out. Like, I haven't been to Austin in a while, but it's like the one thing to put on my list. So, all right, Kyle, what about you? You and I both live in the Bay Area. Like, what kind of tips would you like to share? Maybe you can even share something that I don't even know. But
Yeah, I think everyone is familiar with Bay Area. I don't want to show, I mean, the place. I think you guys are much familiar with me. Yeah, I going to show a Chinese restaurant in Cupertino, and the restaurant name is Ping Bistro, Ping. Yeah, it's a traditional dishes from Yunnan province.
Oh,
The
okay.
roasted fish and the layer mushroom. You must to try. It's really, really fantastic.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
Yunnan, I don't think I've run into a Yunnan food restaurant in the Bay Area. We have a lot of Chinese restaurants, but Yunnan isn't, I mean, compared to other regions, it's not as well known, right? So, yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out. So,
yeah,
cool.
sure.
All right. Well, it was great having you on, not just for the travel tips, but the tips on migration. I appreciate it. If you don't mind, I would like to have you back on, maybe an update on the migration playbook, because I'm
Yeah.
sure it'll be continuously updated. So,
Yeah, and tell the audience
uh,
keep their eyes out for the white paper. As far as I
yeah,
know, it's forthcoming sometime soon in the future.
yeah, cool. All right. Well, thanks both. Thanks, Daniel.
Cheers,
Bye.
everyone.